The United States government is complicit in genocide.
Don't touch him.
You have an obligation
Eddie,
to
no.
the Constitution of the United States.
Eddie.
I am a disabled veteran.
Eddie.
Let's go.
Eddie. There's a genocide. There's a genocide.
You are all complicit in genocide. All of you.
Stop filming, ma'am. She was filming as well. Officer, stop the bomb! As well. Shame on you! Aguilar, talk to the camera. Aguilar,
You're arresting us for speaking out against genocide.
Stop the bombs!
The U.S.
Stop the
Congress
bombs!
is paying for the death of children, women and children.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. It is December 26th. I'm your host, Rathbone. Tonight is a special stream. We've got a special guest with us, Anthony Aguilar, who you just saw getting kicked out of a Senate hearing and arrested, actually. He is a former Green Beret and famous whistleblower of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. He's a harsh critic of Israel. He is a loud pro-Palestine voice. His testimony has had a deep impact on public opinion about Gaza. So I'm going to bring him in right now. We're going to have a conversation. And I want to thank all of you for submitting questions for this stream. We'll try to get to all of them tonight. So without further ado, I'm very happy and privileged to get to speak with Anthony. I am a new... Here we go. There we go. I'm new to StreamYard, so we figured it out. How you doing, Anthony? Welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. It's a real honor to share the evening with you and get to have a discussion with your well-informed audience and answer some questions, and hopefully we all benefit from it.
Absolutely. And yeah, we actually did compile a list of questions for you. My community, you know, we had a little Discord thread and everybody submitted questions. So we'll try to get to all of them, but I would like to jump right in. And I think our first question to you is just how have you been doing? Because it's been about 5-6 months maybe since you became, you know, a vocal critic of the Israeli occupation and the American complicity. You blew the whistle on the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, most famously, and in that time, a lot has happened, including you being arrested, as we just saw, for interrupting a Senate hearing. You faced a lot of attacks and smears. And I just wonder, like, how have you been doing through all this, and what have you learned, really, from, you know, the 6 months since you got back from Gaza and became a, you know, a public critic? How's it been going?
That's a great question, and it's been life-changing in a way.
Absolutely.
You know, I didn't intend to go to Gaza and then whistleblow or reveal or investigate, or was really in a mindset of an activist on any side other than knowing that what was happening. Mm-hmm. So it really kind of pulled the carpet under me from my life, very much not in the public. I have no social media, and I was being, you know, pretty much lived a off the grid type of life, and being put into the spotlight like that. What really shocked me more so is the pushback and the smearing, not against the substance of the claims of what I saw, but an attempt to discredit me in order to then discredit the testimony. When at this point, I think the world clearly sees the truth of what's happening in Gaza, what's happened in the past, in the preceding months and years. That the continuation of the apartheid and the oppression, not only in Gaza but in the West Bank, and then yet even still there are voices that want to deny, counter-accuse, and attack those that are simply sharing with the world. Let's maintain our humanity And this is my first Christmas out of the Army. I spent 25 years in the Army. This is my first Christmas that I haven't been in the Army since I was 17 years old. So a lot of life changes in terms of career, life, family. It's just it's been a lot happening in the last 6 months, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know that Israel is very desperate right now, and I wonder, like, have you had to take any legal action to protect yourself and your family? It seems like there would be like, are you in a undisclosed bunker right now? Are you using a burner laptop? Like, what's the level of fear there in terms of what they might come at you and try and do? Is there anything like that?
I mean, I've received death threats and credible death threats when I first came home. My family for about a month stayed out of state, and
wow.
We were lying low. And because I do maintain quite a low profile on social media of my own, and I also lead a pretty not too exciting life, other than when I'm getting arrested in Congress. We've had some pretty credible death threats and threats against me and threats against my family, which is unfortunate. And it really just goes to show to put it bluntly, the level of ignorance of quite a few people that truly don't understand the situation, and they take what either is fed on legacy media or from people that have an agenda, and it's dangerous. Just as an example, earlier this week, I was shopping, and I was at a grocery store, and someone recognized me, and they said, "Oh, you're the colonel that's telling all the lies about that Gaza place." And I was like, "Oh, the Gaza place."
The lies.
I said, "Okay." I said, "That's." I was like, "So do you know about Palestine and Gaza and what's happening?" And he says, "Well, all I know is that you disgraced the uniform by talking about these terrorists." I was like, "Terrorists? Okay." I was like, let's just partake in a small exercise. And I pulled up my phone and I just pulled up a world map, and I said, "Point out Gaza for me. Point out Israel. Point out Jordan, Egypt. Point out any country in the Middle East or Levant." "Well, this isn't a geography lesson." I said, "Well, you're right, it's not, but you have the audacity to call somebody a liar and say that what I'm saying isn't true, and you don't even bring to the table knowledge of where in the world you're talking about."
Right.
So I see on both sides, both ends of the spectrums, where there's so much pandering to a narrative of what people hear or what people feel they should be aligned with, like this idea that if you're not Israel first, then you're anti-American.
Right.
A la a Ted Cruz or a Randy Fine.
Yeah. Well, that's pretty nice of you to like take the time out and be like, let's pull out the phone, let's pull out the map. Like, what are you talking about here? And they, of course, they can never really back up what their claims are with any substance. So I feel like you're helping normalize acting out on your integrity, and I want to commend you for that. You must feel like you're emboldening others who have experienced the same atrocities to take action and also make themselves visible. Does it surprise you that there aren't more like you at this point?
It does not surprise me, because there are a lot of risks. There are a lot of,
right.
I guess if you were to, for me, the way I see it is that, could I make a list of pros and cons of, hey, should I speak out and risk my life and my welfare and my security and my well-being? Let me make a list of pros and cons. And I'm sure the cons list would be pages long, but the pro list is conscience. humanity, doing what's
Yeah.
right, and no list of all of the cons or the risks associated to that. In my opinion, and how I live my life, does not compare to consciousness and humanity. This is not what I witnessed in Gaza, and I've shared this with other platforms before, but I think it's important to repeat in that when I went into Gaza, I did not view things through a lens or a worldview of someone that hasn't seen or experienced the worst in warfare and conflict, and quite honestly in human nature. I mean, during the, in Iraq in the 2004-2005 years, during the height of Sunni Shia sectarian violence and the civil war that was taking place while we were there fighting a counterinsurgency, and the amount of just civilian casualties and deaths, and seeing this every day, and then in Syria, and then in Afghanistan, and then back in Iraq in 1819 during the Battle of Mosul to push ISIS out, and then furthermore into Syria again, into Raqqa. I thought I had seen the worst of the worst when it came to just depravity and violence. What I saw in Gaza is something that I will never forget. I can't describe the feeling of on May 24th, 2025, as I drove through the Karim Shalom gate, driving into Rafah, which is now leveled. The entire area of Rafah, as you recall, when the ceasefire this past March broke down and Israeli forces went into their offensive in Rafah, they razed it to the ground, leveled it. There's nothing left. And as you're driving through the rubble going to the distribution sites, you can still hear the cries of people buried in the rubble. You can see, we saw a feral dog running by with a child's arm in its mouth, and just the sheer level of violence brought against the civilian population is something that this world cannot tolerate.
Yeah, and you've and like you said, you kind of preempted a lot of other topics here that I want to talk with you about, but just the fact that you had already served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I wanted to ask you how that relates. And I know you've answered this, and it's unparalleled what's happening in Gaza. It doesn't relate to really anything else that you've ever seen. But I mean, now people talk about Iraq and Afghanistan, Operation Iraqi Freedom. It's the whole WMD lie. I mean, everybody, can Monday morning quarterback that and see how that was also a war crime. But yet you're taking it a step further and saying, out of all the things that you've seen, this is on a league unto itself, correct? Basically. Yeah.
Yes. If we look back in history of our military intervention and I'll say failed nation building in Afghanistan and Iraq, and the books are still open in Iraq. We're still there. We still have operational combat forces to this day, still operating in Iraq. That book is still open. Yeah. And when you look at the our preemptive nature and the pretense of what we're doing in the global South in Venezuela, which will surely in the annals of history be considered a war crime and an egregious violation of international humanitarian laws and norms. So there's in context of the justification to go to war, which is really and in democracy, it's on our Congress, it's on our lawmakers, it's on our executive branch in the justice to go to war. Then you have how a war is fought, and the justice in war is typically in the hands and the nature of those that are fighting it. And Iraq, Afghanistan, we could question the entire nature and the premise of going to war in the first place, in addition to everything in between. Now, in Israel, in Gaza, the United States, we're not a combatant. We're not a belligerent in this conflict directly.
Mm-hmm.
But the United States is a significant contributor to not only the weapons, but the policy, the strategy, the impunity, the behavior of the Israeli forces and what they get away with. But what makes it different, what makes Gaza and the conflict ongoing against the Palestinians, what makes it different is the inherent intent in destroying the population. The concept of the fog of war, as Pete Hegseth likes to throw around, who really has no idea what he's talking about. But when you consider the fog and the friction of war, and that there are, within wars and violence, there are things that we try to manage and control, but the targeting of the civilian population, the absolute destruction, killing, starvation, displacement of Palestinians is Israel's goal. That's the goal. And I wish that was something that we could argue back and say, oh, well, you're just assuming that. But no, we've heard these words come out of the mouths of Netanyahu, of Smotrich, of Ben-Gvir, of other Israeli leaders who'd say things like mow the lawn, referring to reducing the population in Gaza, or starving them out, or putting them on a diet by reducing their caloric, the amount of food going in, to reduce the amount of nutrition. So what's really starkly different to me that is absolutely unacceptable and is an absolute violation of war crimes from inception and in execution is that the intent is to destroy the entire population.
Yeah. And, collateral damage, we're often told, is a byproduct of war. But in the case of Israel, it seems like that's the point, is to wreak as much collateral damage as they possibly can. And I think you're spelling out in no uncertain terms the definition of what a genocide actually is: the intent to destroy in whole or in part an entire part of the civilization. So so the next thing I wanted to ask you is, you've offered such harrowing testimony. It's like first, in-person contact. You've experienced these things, and some of the stories you've told are just crazy and depraved. But I want to maybe, like, for our audience, if we could just remind everyone about the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation and its structure. I find this really interesting, the structure of it, and how you've been able to break this down. But we know it's called the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, yet it's comprised of private mercenaries, right, that are contracted by Safe Reach Solutions and UG Solutions, as I understand it. And then you have the Infidels biker gang, which you talk about, which I wanted to, maybe you could tell us what that is as well. And then you have the IDF, which is supposedly your client, even though you thought you were going there, your client were the Palestinians, you were supposed to be there to feed them. But it turns out the IDF is really, you have to obey what your client tells you to do. So maybe if you could just talk about the GHF and how it's constructed and how these parts all work together and the roles that they play.
Absolutely. It's really, really important to break that down and understand it, to see how deep this goes, especially when you start talking about Jared Kushner and members of our Congress. It goes much deeper. But as you've already laid out, you had the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation did not exist as a foundation or as an entity until February of this year. So ceasefire breaks down, back into conflict. Shortly thereafter, Israel blocks all UNRWA relief going into Gaza. And this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation just kind of appears in name. But the background to the structure plans had been laid since 2021. The inaugural director of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation was Jake Wood. And if anybody knows that name, that's co-founder of Blackwater, Team Rubicon, military, mercenary, government contracting type of character arc, if you will, and what he and Prince have been involved in throughout the world, which is, by the way, not good. So now, when the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation came to be, in order to make it seem like this benevolent, this facade, if you will, this camouflage of humanitarian, they made it non-profit, and they made it non-governmental. So an NGO, non-profit, staged in the U.S., but a mystery, which is still a mystery today, which will come out eventually in legal pursuits, would be who funded the GHF, who are its backers, who are its secret businessmen and conglomerates that backed it. We still don't know. We know some, but we don't know all. So then the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation could not be a monetary receiving contractual body, because they said they're humanitarian, and humanitarian missions by principle cannot be in a contract with one side of the war. So underneath the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, you then had a company called Safe Reach Solutions. Safe Reach Solutions, again, is a company relatively new, popped up in around February timeframe. And the CEO of Safe Reach Solutions is a gentleman by the name of Phil Riley, who was the longtime branch chief of covert operations of the CIA. So the entity within the CIA that the CIA fears, that's this guy now setting up Safe Reach Solutions as a contract entity for humanitarian aid. So the United States, as a U.S. company like Safe Reach Solutions, so not the United States government, but a private U.S. company, did, without question, have a written contract with the government of Israel. That is a fact. That is how the contract was paid and how it was conducted. So you have Safe Reach Solutions, and they have a written binding contract with the Israeli government through the office of the Coordinating Office of Government Activities in the Territories. It's an office in Israel called COGAT, COGAT. COGAT. And COGAT actually falls under the Ministry of Defense. So COGAT is IDF. So the contract between Safe Reach Solutions and COGAT was the executioner of each. You have the IDF, and then you have Safe Reach Solutions. Safe Reach Solutions being only a small staff of 4 or 5 people. Then you had what I would call the actual mechanics of it, where underneath Safe Reach Solutions, you had UG Solutions, which was the contract entity to provide armed security. You had another company called Arkel International, which was a trucking and logistics company. And then you had another company called LMCC, which was responsible for the construction of these distribution sites, which was an Israeli company, which has ownership that goes directly back to Minister Smotrich. So these are all these companies you have operating. And mind you, this is supposed to be a humanitarian aid operation. So the UG Solutions, the entity that UG Solutions hired, so it was very short notice in terms of contract awarding, contract fulfillment. Hey, we're going to get to work. I got a call May 13th at first heard, and I was on a plane flying to Gaza on the 17th. So this was a really quick action type of contract. So the immediate trigger, if you will, that UG Solutions initiated to start wide scale recruitment was they just linked into the Infidels Motorcycle Club, because it's a veterans motorcycle club, and they wanted veterans as part of this security detail. So they immediately plugged the national president of the Infidels Motorcycle Club and said, hey, recruit some guys. Let's go do this. So now you have the armed security element, the armed security apparatus, completely, almost entirely, with the exception of maybe 5 or 6 of us that were not part of the Infidels Motorcycle Club, that is manned by an organization whose charter is the world, the fight against jihad, and the elimination of all Muslims from the earth. They wear a Crusader's cross shield, 1095 emblazoned on their tattoos, on their chest, on their back, which is the year that Pope Urban directed the first Crusades to retake the Holy Land and to eliminate what he called the Muslim vermin scum. That's the organization that UG Solutions put in charge of the entire armed security apparatus to deliver food through a contract mechanism directed by the Israeli military to feed starving Palestinians. If anybody can't see that and just be, what are we doing? Then I don't know what else to tell you.
I didn't realize that the Infidels Motorcycle Club, that was sort of one of my questions for you, was how formal was it? Did they, how involved were they as the security detail? But so you answered that. It's basically they were hired outright. It was mostly staffed by the infidel biker gang.
Almost in its entirety. There was supposed to be UG Solutions was supposed to bring 300 armed contractors on contract, and out of that, they got about 286 right up before we left, and then they hired a few more, but about 276 of that 300 were the Infidels Motorcycle Club.
That's crazy. And so, so just to recap, you have the GHF, this mysterious NGO that gets created in February, almost at the same time that this other private mercenary contracting organization called Safe Reach Solutions is created. And Safe Reach Solutions gets hired by, is it by the Defense Department of Israel to find all of the other parts to make this operation run, as I understand it, and UG Solutions falls under Safe Reach, and then under UG is like the Infidel Motorcycle Club. Is that correct?
That's correct. I would, the analogy that I think is sometimes helpful is thinking about, you're building a house.
Yeah.
The bank is funding the money. You have a contractor that's responsible for the overall build.
Yeah.
And then that contractor pays subcontractors to do the plumbing, to do the electricity, to do the paint, to do the floor. So you have all of these subsidiary subcontractors. Now, imagine if you're building a house for one of the 3 little pigs, and the contract you hire is the wolves to come and build the house for the 3 little pigs, and it's like, oh yeah, we'll build it, and you just bring them right in. It's like giving the fox the keys to the hen house.
Yeah. You also mentioned, you explained it so well, and you talked a bit about the different phases that this humanitarian foundation was supposed to implement. And I remember you describing phase 3, which would have been meant, and I think you kind of alluded to that, the fact that they were the last and final solution, if you will, was to create a concentration camp basically over the ruins of Rafah, and that's where they're now. So like a lot of the sites, as I understand it, they've been dismantled. They're now, like, GHF has been suspended, the operations at least, and so can you talk to us about phase 3 and what that entails?
Yes. So GHF humanitarian operations, again, the actual execution contract through the IDF, the entire humanitarian operation was very much aligned to and a part of the Israeli Defense Forces military operational timeline. Now, one would think, for example, my experience in Iraq and Afghanistan, during military operations, you have what's called MUTWA going on. It's an acronym. military operations other than war. In any type of military operation, military leaders have to account for humanitarian aid, humanitarian assistance, all those things that go into, caring for the population. You cannot disregard a population in war. So, but the key difference from that is typically in the humanitarian assistance, humanitarian aid realm, you have UN, non-government UN or international agencies leading that, not the military that's also fighting the war against the people they're supposed to be feeding. You see how that's very construed. So phase one was the establishment and the building of these sites. That happened right as the ceasefire ended. March timeframe, I believe it was like March 14th or 15th of 2025, when that first ceasefire occurred. They stopped allowing aid to go in, and then LMCC, Israeli company, comes in and starts establishing and building these distribution sites. At the same time, you have Safe Reach Solutions just become a thing. Poof, here we are, Safe Reach Solutions. And that's not a coincidence, because this guy, Phil Riley, who was in charge of Safe Reach Solutions, was himself already in Israel working on a U.S. government contract with Israel through a company called Constellus. So when he sees the opportunity for this new project, this new humanitarian operation, he resigns from Constellus and wins the contract as Safe Reach Solutions that he'd been working on as the Middle East rep for Constellus. So imagine if you're working for Pepsi and there's the Super Bowl's coming up and Coke offers you this great deal and you immediately leave Pepsi, and all of the marketing you did for Pepsi leading up to the Super Bowl, you immediately take all that intellectual property with you and bring all that into Coke and use that for the Super Bowl, undercutting Pepsi entirely, basically for your own profit. So that's what this guy does. Safe Reach Solutions, just an LLC, probably took him 10 minutes on LegalZoom.com, made himself an LLC, and boom, he's now a company. Right. And because he already had the inner workings of that contract, he's awarded the contract. Okay. Because this is not U.S. contracting law, this is Israeli contracting law. There's nothing fiduciarily against that in terms of contracting procedure. So he drops Constellus, starts Safe Reach, gets this contract. Then that starts phase two. And phase two was using the distribution sites. Remember, out of the United Nations operating in Gaza had 400 distribution sites. Right. 400. Like, the scale of that is just monstrous in terms of 400 distribution sites running every single day with meals and food and medical care and water and vaccines and everything needed for the population. When all that was cut off, mid-March, cut off, UN's not going in, UNRWA, you're kicked out. There was this lull where there was no aid going in. And then when GHF started operations under phase two, we had 4 distribution sites. 4. And 3 of those 4 were co-located right next to each other, all the way in the far south of Gaza, which the reason, that was not a coincidence, that was not for safety, that was not for geography. It actually, from a security perspective, makes no sense.
Makes no sense, absolutely.
It just doesn't. I mean, so, but when you look at the operational design of Operation Gideon's Chariots, which was the Israeli offensive of the south from Rafah into Khan Yunis, a supporting operation of the military offensive was to displace the entire population out of Khan Yunis, out of Rafah, into these concentration camps. And for Israel to do that forcibly, like marching down the streets with tanks and pushing people out would be over the top. It would be unacceptable. So who better than to bring in our close partner, the United States, to have a contract so the U.S. does it, and we can keep our hands clean of this. So the U.S., the United States government, because the U.S. government through the State Department put $30 million of our tax money, our tax dollars, went and got paid to a private company, Safe Reach Solutions, to set up phase 2. And the intent of phase 2 was to draw all Palestinians south. Phase 3, the notorious phase 3, was always talked about. And phase 3 was on a big map in the Kogat headquarters in Beersheba.
Okay.
And it showed that going into phase 3, end of August timeframe into September, which corresponds to Operation Gideon's Chariots 2 to take Gaza City. Remember, they started that August 28th?
Mm-hmm.
That operation that cleared Gaza City and pushed the rest of the survivors south aligns to taking the 3 distribution sites all the way in the south and building a humanitarian assistance transit area, which they call the Hatta, a village.
Okay.
Which all surviving Palestinians, all of them, would be concentrated down in this encampment where in its initial build, now that didn't happen because the international community and people started to get involved and say, hey, what's going on here? But it was happening. And the scary part is that when you have a company like GHF or Safe Reach Solutions that just pop up with a LLC and a PO box in the middle of nowhere, they can disappear and reappear, and they've done that. As we speak, Safe Reach Solutions bought UG Solutions and became UG International, set up a new company called Q2 Impact that's now in Israel, in this military coordination center run by the U.S. military in Kiryat Yat outside of Gaza, this MCC as they call it, that's now in there with U.S. military coordinating for distribution sites to be now set up along the yellow line. Again, if the United States military goes with this plan, we, the United States, we will be unequivocally now committing war crimes because and the military leaders in this military coordination center and military leaders in our Department of Defense should know, they do know, and they should exercise authority over this, that if you establish humanitarian aid with the of its purpose is to feed or clothe or provide water or medicine or support to the population, and in doing so you establish it in an area that inherently puts that population at risk, that is a violation of the Geneva Convention, flat out. Absolutely. Black and white.
Yeah.
So if the U.S. goes along with this plan for where these sites will be built, we, the United States, and U.S. military leaders operating this Central Command military coordination center are absolutely complicit in the violation of international law and the further complicity in war crimes, and that's a fact.
What do you think is the reason, ostensibly, for changing the name or buying for Safe Reach to basically buy UG Solutions and then rebrand itself under a new name? Do you think that's a way for them to continue doing what they're doing without having the international outcry, basically? Is that what I understand here?
Yeah, so the GHF kind of became a dirty name going into the past few months. So I told you the first director of GHF was a guy named Jake Wood. His background. on the very first day of operations, Jake Wood stepped down from the GHF.
I do remember that.
And an individual named Johnny Moore took over.
Right. This is the guy that was, I think he did a video and he's like, there's no, we're not harming the Palestinians or anything. And then there's gunfire in the background or something at this site. Is that the same guy?
He is the individual that, as he's talking about, saying that we have never had any incidents or any shooting at any of our sites. And as he's speaking, the video that they chose to use, you can hear machine gun fire in the video. And it's just, it's quite appalling that anybody would have the audacity to say that and then we've never had any shooting incidents. And then, but then also in the video, what's also funny is that the video that they used, that video is video that I recorded when I was
really
in the first couple of weeks. I was the only one doing any type of recording of anything, and the reason being was they didn't want any recording done. The reason they tasked me, and again, I wasn't out there being undercover detective, trying to find out info. I was tasked with it. Hey, Tony, since you're in charge of operations, for every distribution, video it so we can then come back and review what we need to, how many more trucks we should bring on, or what was damaged and what we might have to repair. And so I was like, sure. So I was out there doing video, with my iPhone because I was tasked to do it. Yeah. So all these videos, like the video they show with the guy that was on the berm shooting, who emptied an entire magazine into a crowd of unarmed people begging for food and begging for water and fighting for their lives amongst this crushing crowd of thousands of people. And this guy shoots into them with his machine gun. And that guy, he says, woohoo. And then the guy on the ground, you can hear him say in return, oh, I think you got one. Yeah. And he then yells back in response like, oh, hell yeah, boy. I know that incident happened because I'm the one that filmed it. I was there. I recorded it. So when they show these videos and they say, oh, well, that's all made up. Aguilar is just making, it's like, there's video. I'm not. They discharged you, right? For misconduct or something. They made up some excuse because you were asking too many questions, I guess. Is that well? So when I was working for this company, I had already been retired. I was a private citizen, retired, military retiree. In the first few weeks of being retired, I kind of got restless. So I was working at Lowe's Home and Garden in the outdoor garden as just kind of a part-time job. I had no ambitions of being a military contractor, but so when I got hired by them, I kind of felt it as, I thought that we were going to feed people, that we actually intended to do this right. Two, that they wanted my expertise. They didn't just hire a young soldier that was in the Army for 4 years and got out. I mean, what do they expect when you hire a 25-year colonel veteran that he's going to bring to the table, that he's going to, why would you hire that guy if he's not going to come to the table and say, hey, this is how the operation should be performed. This is how it should be better. And especially if there's war crimes committed in front of that individual, that he's just going to be quiet about it. I spent 25 years, living under an oath to our nation. And again, very well educated in international humanitarian law, Geneva Convention, laws of armed conflict, laws of land warfare. So I don't know what they thought when they hired me. That they knew my rank, they knew my experience, but I don't know if they thought that I would just go along with it, or maybe I was just one of the guys. But so on the 13th of June, I resigned. So we were there. Incident happened in the control room where one of the Israeli officers, one of the IDF Israeli operations officers, directed snipers to shoot to shoot and kill 3 children.
I remember. Yeah, I remember you telling this crazy story. I was hoping we could touch on this a little bit because it's absolutely wild. You were pulling on like you had control room duty apparently that day, and it just so happened that there's these crazy biometric surveillance cameras and this makeshift operation y'all have, and you're watching these kids and or this whole crowd get shuffled into the distribution site, and I think you said a father hoisted their children, his children, up onto his shoulders, and they climbed onto the top of the berm, I think, the little hill there, and they were running. And you said an IDF soldier told you to handle that for some reason, and you kind of pushed back on him, and he went and spoke Hebrew to his IDF soldier or something, and ordered that person to shoot at the children. And I think that was probably a big revelation for you at that time, right? I mean,
it's not that incident itself, but more so what the lead contractor from SRS, what he said to me after that incident is what for me was my final straw. Because everything going up to that point, I thought, okay, I have dealt with partnered force militaries my entire career. As a Green Beret, when we deploy, we partner and we train with indigenous forces, with joint forces, with coalition forces. That's kind of our bread and butter. So working with other militaries, working by, with, and through, I was experienced in doing that. So to me, this was nothing new. You know, you try to exert your will by, with, and through a force you're working with. But in this case, this is not a war that the U.S. was fighting in. This was not our war. The Israeli army was, the belligerent combatant in this, and that so it was very difficult to work with them for quite a few reasons. One of which, they were very arrogant. It was surprisingly very arrogant for a military that is
the most moral,
the most capable, the best. And I'll tell everybody listening, that is not true. They are not even the most moral, well-equipped army in Israel. They are immoral. They are very violent, like extremely violent in their approach to everything, and will not, like, it's also very, I don't know if you've heard about how they do the recruiting, to where now they're doing recruiting into the military by providing these reservist tokens. I don't know if you've heard of it.
Yes, we have been covering this. This is
So these reservist tokens. So now you have military unit leaders in the IDF that have almost become like mafia bosses, to where they can go out and get a bunch of people to come in exchange for this reservist token. But as part of this exchange for this reservist token that you receive, you can exchange. It's almost like Bitcoin. You can use it for different things. So you can, the commander of an IDF unit can go to the leader of a kibbutz. The kibbutz in Israel are kind of these socialist neighborhood population community type things, where they're almost run like a tribe, or like a closed family. They're these little areas throughout Israel. So an IDF officer who has reservist tokens can go to this kibbutz leader and say, hey, in exchange for your ready, ably-bodied 19-year-old men, I'll give you these reservist tokens. Well, those guys go with him, and they get assigned to that guy's unit. So now that IDF guy not only has, it really comes down to, well, who has the bigger unit? Almost like in the days of feudal knighthood, where you raised an army by paying people. But now they have loyalty to this commander, which is where you see so much of the inhumane and the war crimes and the violations being so rampant, because you have someone that is leading in their military at the tactical level that isn't necessarily a leader. He just has the most money. It's kind of like, It'd be like putting Donald Trump in charge of a battleship. Like, he has zero experience in it. He just bought his position. So how they're recruiting and how they're bringing everybody in on this day, because of my position, I was the director of operations. So I not only operated at the actual sites. Imagine like a foreman in a factory, right? He's up in the office, he's down on the floor, he's out with the employees. He's kind of, your quality control checking everything. You don't just have one place. So as director of operations, my job was to understand, how things are going on the sites, coordinating operations back at the control room, which was in Kerem Shalom on the Israel side of the border. So on that particular day, on that morning, I was up at site 4 during a distribution to just basically observe, monitor, make sure everything was on track, because everything was so critical with timing because of the IDF operations. Like, we had to get in and out because of bombing. So there were times where we got in and they're like, hey, we're gonna start executing bombing, phase 2-1 alpha, target set, whatever. And we were there. We couldn't get out. So we just have to hunker down. Everything was so chaotic. So that afternoon, I was in the operations center as, kind of part of my duties. And we were doing a distribution going on at site number 3, which was in the south. And as you mentioned, as you described, exactly that, these 3 children, they were being crushed. And not just, think about 10,000 people crammed. Imagine if you took a Walmart and you just took everything out of the Walmart, and in the middle of it, you put a stack of $1 million, and you told everybody at 9 a.m., we're opening the door, first come, first serve to get this money. And you only let people in through one door. Yeah. And you only let people out through the same door. Imagine that. And then so on these sites, you had stampeding and crushing and suffocation. And these children were literally being crushed and pushed up against this concrete wall that was lined with razor wire. Yeah, it's not like they were just having fun or something. They were trying to survive the stampede. They would have been crushed and killed. These were small children, and so this father, as you said, picks them up and puts them up on top of this berm that was about 5 feet high. And when he's doing that, this IDF colonel who's in the operations room, he loses it. He says, "Oh, get them off of there! Get them off of there! That's a security risk." And I was like, "Hey, calm down. They're children. They don't have any shoes on. One of them doesn't even have a shirt. They have nothing in their hands. They're scared." And he says, "Get them down." And I said, "The men on the ground are taking care of it. They're addressing the issue." And he, like I said, he goes back to his desk, says something on the radio, comes back over. We have one of the contractors working there was an Intel guy, an Intel collector who spoke Hebrew too. So he was like, "Hey, that guy just said to, task the snipers there to shoot them off of there." So when he came back up and I was like, "Hey man, did you just direct your snipers to shoot these children?" He said, "Well, if you're not going to take care of them, then I will." And I said, so that's where they said that I became difficult to work with. Yeah, I was like, "You are not going to shoot children. Number 1, you're not going to shoot children. Number 2, if you miss, you will kill others. Right. 3, even if you hit them and or miss, you might kill an American contractor. No, you are not doing this." And I thought at that point, the other Americans in the control room would have been like, "Yeah, we're not doing this." And I'm like, am I alone here? I was like, what is going on? Like, we're not going to shoot children, right? Sorry, you preempted my next question, which was, did you just feel like a crazy person the whole time? Because it seemed like you were the only one, like you're saying, who felt any outrage for what was happening. Well, I felt, but then again, you're working with a bunch of infidel.
Sorry.
Well, yes. So when I started to put things into context, exactly that. I had gone, so I told you what really broke the straw for me was what happened after this. So afterwards, the director of operations for Safe Reach Solutions, so kind of, my boss at the next tier level. This is like kind of like a pyramid scheme. So the next tier level, my boss, he says, after I was in there and after this situation de-escalates, he was like, "Hey, Tony, come on over here." I went to go talk to him, and he was like, "Hey, never say no to the client." And I was like, "Excuse me?" He's like, I'm missing something here. What do you mean? And he's like, and I was like, "I was having a discussion with an IDF commander about giving an order to shoot children." Who's the client?
Right.
He says, the IDF are our client. We work for the IDF. And I said, "Whoa." I said, "So all of this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, this humanitarian aid," I was like, "all these problems we've been having, we're not giving them any water. We're purposely limiting the amount of food that we go in. We open up sites and then close sites with no announcement to the people. All that's being directed by and controlled by the IDF." He's like, "Yeah, this is their operation. We work for them." And I was like, that is not what this organization or this operation is advertised to be. That cannot be that way. And so I resigned, and I told him, his name was Kevin, and I said, "Hey, I cannot be a part of this anymore." And I was not the first one that resigned. There were about 8 people that resigned before me in the same resigned in protest. I remember on the very first day we did distribution on the 26th of May at Site 1, when we had 34,000 plus starving Palestinians. On that day, on the 26th of May, 2025, I thought that's where it ended for Tony. We're on this site, and the IDF released the holding line, and there were so many people on foot coming to this site that you could feel the ground shaking, like a train was coming towards you. Yeah. And when they came up over the berms and the walls and through the gates of the site, 34,000 people, and this lead contractor guy, this lead guy from the Infidels Motorcycle Club, started shooting and punching people with brass knuckles. And one of the other contractors, he was like, "I'm done. I'm out. I'm not going to be a part of this." So I was not the first to resign, and I was not the last to resign. But I resigned, and I told Kevin, the SRS guy, I said, I can't be a part of this, man. I mean, he was in the military also, he retired from the military. I said, you know why I can't be a part of this, and you shouldn't either. Like, this is not okay. This is like, you can't just write this off as, oh, it's the Israelis doing it, not us. We're a part of it. We can't do this. Yeah. And so I resigned, and the next day I came and I told him, I was like, I'll stay here I'll stay here the following day. So I'm not just, dropping everything on because I was doing all the convoy planning, all the operational cycle planning, all of the truck planning in coordination with the rest of the staff. So I didn't want to just be like, "Blop, here you go." So I was like, I'll stay in one more day, kind of, so you need to pick someone that's taking my place, but I am out. I am leaving. Yeah. And that same day, that very day is when the Iranian-Israeli war kicked off.
Oh wow! So it was like the beginning of June.
We were also. I couldn't leave. I resigned on the 14th, and then literally that same morning, ballistic missiles are coming into Beersheba, Tel Aviv, Ashkelon, Ashdod, and nobody could leave. So on the day I resigned, the war started. So I was stuck in the middle of 2 wars.
That's insane, man. Can we just return back to phase 3? Just to, yes, you're saying that phase 3 is basically a failure of the IDF, right? I mean, they never really got to implement phase 3. They had to compromise. You say that now they've co-opted, food distribution along the yellow line. Would you look at that as a compromise? Like they couldn't do what they really want to do, but here's the next best thing.
So I know that. So if you've heard of Project Sunrise,
I have not.
Project Sunrise. If you look it up, Project Sunrise is this new deal that Kushner has just unveiled. The president announced it, that his great son-in-law has brought peace to the Middle East, and that him and Witkoff have proposed this $112 billion resort real estate rebuilding project. It's called Project Sunrise. The plans for that, there's an interview about a month ago, you can see where Kushner and Witkoff are being interviewed, and Witkoff says mistakenly, or either he was off script or he wasn't speaking at a school. He was like, "Oh yeah, Jared's been working on this for like 2 years now," and you see Kushner's face like,
"Yeah, he looks mortified." The master plan, right?
That's what that is. Project Sunrise.
Okay.
That's what it's called. So, phase 3 of the IDF plan to displace the entire population to the south was critical to execute and start Project Sunrise, because in order to start all of that deconstruction of rubble and reconstruction along the most lucrative real estate, you need everybody out of it. You need everybody out. So, but then when you look at, this is something that I also asked myself as the pieces started to come together, kind of like a Quentin Tarantino movie where, like in Pulp Fiction, where it starts off in the diner and then ends in the diner, but everything comes together. So I'm kind of sitting there looking, I'm like, that's why. Because I thought, if we're only doing 4 distribution sites, and one of them closed down very soon after we opened it up and became an IDF base, so really 3. So if we're only having 3 distribution sites to feed the entire population of Gaza, why didn't we spread them out? Why are they all located down here in the south? Well, one, it's a forced displacement mechanism. You have a choice. You starve to death, or you leave your home and you go down there to get it. Because once you go down to the distribution site, you get biometrically enrolled and you don't get to go home. So you have a choice: starve to death or leave your home. So that was all critical to Project Sunrise, to clear out all of northern Rafah, Khan Yunis, Mawasi, Gaza City, Beit Hanun, to displace everybody, to clear that area out so that where construction was going to start in the north. So they did not abandon that when the GHF, so we have October 10th, new ceasefire. GHF closes operations, gets out of Gaza. But again, the GHF has not gone away. They still exist.
Okay.
They're still in Israel negotiating. They're behind the scenes. And so now you have this new UG Worldwide or UG International that's going to be going back in here in early January to start manning with security, same Infidel Motorcycle Club guys, along 15 sites along the yellow line. So their plan shifted a little bit. Instead of drawing everybody to the south, they're still pulling them to the south. But now as part of this new offering that came in UN Resolution 2803, which is the 20-point peace plan, that was shoved down the throats of the UN and adopted as a resolution. That now, how that changes this humanitarian transition operation is that now you have 3 choices now: starve to death and die where you are, or because the food that Israel's now allowing in, they're not allowing it past the yellow line. So if you're past the yellow line in Gaza City or the areas that are the hardest hit, the food's not coming to you. So now you have a choice: starve to death, or you go to the site. You have to go to the yellow line. We've seen time and time and time again since this ceasefire has started, that any Palestinians that get near these yellow blocks of death get killed. Women, children. especially children. So now you have a choice: starve to death or go to the site, or you have a choice. I'm not going to go, and I'll stay here, and I'll probably starve, or
Right.
I'm going to go and risk my chances of getting shot. But even if I survive, 100%, I will be biometrically enrolled into the database, and Palantir runs that. This whole backframe of this is all run by Palantir Gotham.
Yep.
So feeds into Palantir, which is then shared with the Israeli army. So that's a guarantee. Your other choice is you can agree to leave. You can agree to leave Gaza, to be put on a plane, and the Israeli government will pay for it, and they're going to send you to either South America or South Africa or Crete. I know that the U.S. government and the Israeli government have purchased 400 acres off the eastern part of Cyprus.
Wow.
So we're going to be displacing people to Cyprus. We're going to be displacing people to South Africa. We're going to be displacing into this diaspora. So that's their choices now: die of starvation, risk getting killed and getting biometrically enrolled, or agree to leave.
Yeah.
Either
So
way,
really,
you cut it, it's displacement.
yeah.
It's genocide.
Right. I mean, either way you put it, like you said, I mean, it's still the same outcome. I guess it's just, not proceeding as fast as they want, and they've had to improvise. But that's okay. So then now they have to go to the yellow line. I mean, are there still the same? Is it still just one distribution along the yellow line, or is there more? I also heard that the UN had resumed overseeing the aid distribution, but is that not really what's happening?
No, so what's happening now is as part of the 20 points of this 20-point peace deal, which is, for like I said, for lack of better terms, it is UN Resolution 2803.
Yeah,
is basically the adoption of that 20-point peace plan into a UN resolution.
Mm-hmm.
So who's running it now is the U.S. Central Command, United States Central Command, that is headquartered in Doha, in Qatar, now has a small staff element in Israel at Kiryat Yat. It's a small village in the east of Gaza in Israel, southern Israel, but east of Gaza, kind of in the Negev desert area, and it's run by Central Command. And in there you have the IDF, and you have UN. UNRWA is still not able to operate, but you have other NGOs and other entities underneath the UN, like the World Food Program, Med Global, Doctors Without Frontiers, things like that, operating, but they all have to coordinate through this Civil Military Coordination Center, the CMCC. Still everything dictated by Kogat as to what can go in to Gaza. Still limiting. So the amount going in is still severely limited. It's nowhere near the amount. Remember, on the full scale every day, because Gaza was essentially an open air concentration camp, total control and occupation from the sky, the sea, the land. Everything going into Gaza had to be brought in. So 400 distribution sites serviced by 600 trucks every day. At the height of GHF operations, with our 3 sites only operating 1 site at a time, we were only bringing in 12 trucks. So you look at that comparison. Now the United Nations can operate, but they can only go to the yellow line. So all of the Palestinians that are concentrated in these destroyed areas of the central cities, this yellow line has been kind of drawn around that. Everything east of the yellow line, well, that's all now under Israeli control. So all of the UN food that comes in, that enters into Israel, doesn't go past the yellow line. So that food that's coming in, it's not going to the people. They have to go get it. It creates just so many different conflicting elements of things coming together with the UN and the Israeli army and hungry Palestinians, and now throw into the mix these infidel motorcycle club guys with machine guns. I mean, it's just a
It's like it's back to before phase 1, but it's somehow not the same. It's worse now. But
it's worse. They've just given it a name.
Right. I was going to ask you if we could somehow teleport back to where you were exactly positioned in Gaza earlier this year. Like, what would we see right now? How has it changed? I'm guessing the sites wouldn't be there anymore. It would just be empty land at this point. I mean,
yeah, the sites have been deconstructed and pretty much flattened, bulldozed over. CNN. So I actually, when Admiral Bradley, 4-star admiral, he is the commander of Central Command.
Yeah.
When it was announced that he would be going into Israel for an assessment to first steps for this civil military coordination center, I emailed him directly with a read receipt, so I know he received it, to his military email. I emailed him and I said, "Sir, on behalf of the United States, you now going in as Central Command with U.S. military operating in these areas, you have an inherent duty and an obligation to know what's going on." I said, "Mark my words, the distribution sites 1, 2, 3, and 4, outside of those sites, along the northern berm of the South 3 sites and the southern berm of the northern 4th site, there are bodies that are buried." Seen it. The people that would get killed, the IDF would just come out with bulldozers and bury these bodies. And sure enough, you can find CNN's report. CNN did an investigation into Gaza about 3 weeks ago, discovering at these locations along the aid routes shallow graves of hundreds of buried Palestinians. So it's now they're going to repeat the exact same process. They've given everything a new name. They've given it a title of this U.S. peacekeeping, U.S.-led, IDF-coordinated international security force, the ISF, of which, if you've been keeping track of that, Israel will not allow Turkey to join, and Saudi and Egypt have backed out. So who's going to be part of this ISF?
Sounds
to me like it's going to be just the IDF.
Yeah.
And potentially U.S. service members, which is something. The reason that spurred my initial protest to Congress is that we are being led into a conflict that will put Americans. This will no longer be just a Palestinian problem or an IDF problem or Israel's problem that we support from across the ocean. The United States will soon be pulled in to something that is far greater than we can handle. And thousands of Americans will die. And that's what I've been pleading to Congress with, the follow your oath to the Constitution. Yeah. You took an oath to the Constitution, not to AIPAC, not to a political party, not to a foreign government. You took an oath to our Constitution, and you're violating that. That because I see it all, how this is all coming together now from the ground all the way up to the strategic level, and it's very concerning. It's very frightening, and I fear for what the United States is soon going to be further involved in.
And you mentioned that I didn't know this, but Jared Kushner and the new name for the GHF is going to resume its operations in January. You said they're going to contract it out again.
If you were to type in UG Solutions, it'll take you to their new webpage, UG International or UG Worldwide. But they're openly and actively recruiting. They have to recruit up to 1,500 armed security contractors for these new sites that are going to be set up in Gaza along the Yellow Line. They are there. I I have very close friends that were hired on that are there. I have close friends that are in the region, either under the State Department or friends that I've come to know through the press, the Associated Press, the New York Times, etc., that are there. And yeah, the UG contractors are all there waiting on their orders to go in and start resuming operations. So it's happening.
I wonder how your close friends look at, your activism and all the things that you've been whistleblowing about, and, how are they still going and being a part of this at this point? And what kind of conversations?
I asked myself that, sometimes we ask ourselves that, man, if I could go back in history, I would have done something about slavery. If I could go back in history, I would have done something about the Holocaust. How could people just sit by and watch it happen? Mm-hmm. Well, we are seeing how people can sit by and watch it happen, because there are, case in point for me, they were paying me $2,000 a day between
pretty good paycheck,
between paying for my salary, my per diem, all my travel, all of our hotels, paying for everything. I'm making $2,000 a day. Now, if, let's say I'm a young man, young woman, 4 years in the Army, maybe wasn't even in the Army, but willing to go overseas, willing to go on a contract like this.
Right.
And if I do it for 6 months, $60,000 a month. If I do it for 6 months, I can come home with almost $200,000. If I stay and do it a year and get a bonus, I can come home with almost $1 million. Can you imagine? It's
a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. So it's very easy. Like for me, what I saw, it would have been very easy to say nothing. Mm-hmm. Not necessarily be a part of it, but to say, it's not my problem. I'm not my problem, and just not say a word, and then collect my money, come home, not let it bother me, not bring all of this hate and smearing and attacks and driving me into the public eye. It would have been much easier. But I can't.
You have a conscience.
I can't. I could not live with myself, regardless of all the money, regardless of all the popularity, regardless of who likes me and who doesn't, or who's my friend and who's not, or
you couldn't live with yourself.
It doesn't matter. It's unfortunate that that's the way things are, but I don't have a choice. It's either live with myself or not be able to live with myself. And I'm telling you, what the world needs to understand is that what is happening to Palestinians in Gaza, let alone the West Bank, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
Just in Gaza, this is inhumane. This is not how war is fought. This is not war. This is not humanity. And I don't care who out there will say, well, it's a war. And, I hear this all the time. Well, Hamas shouldn't have started it. They didn't know how to, they didn't want to finish it, from a lot of veterans, and I'm like, that is such an ignorant thing to say. And that children, mothers, fathers, if someone were to witness a father carrying their child, I'm a father, carrying their child dead from starvation, watching your child die, and then after your child is dead, you're begging the IDF to allow you to bury your child, because anywhere in Gaza, if you're caught digging anywhere, there's going to be a bomb following you. So the level of dehumanization, the starvation, the indiscriminate bombing, the forced displacement. Right now, so many Palestinians are displaced and living in these encampment tent cities where open sewage and no electricity and it's getting cold, and you have people dying of hypothermia. And
Right.
this is the most depraved that we as human beings can allow. And for me, that's something that I could not stand for. Whether it puts me in my grave speaking out against it, it is the most evil. And what I warn the world is that if the treatment of the Palestinians in Gaza, if the treatment of the Palestinians in the occupied territories, if that becomes normalized, we are all in grave danger.
Absolutely.
Because it will come here. It will come to us. And it's
That's
not a matter of the color of your skin, your race, your gender, your religion, your ethnic background. What it's a matter of is who is in power. And I think history has shown us is that when the power turns, for those that think that, oh, this doesn't affect me, that day will come and it'll be too late. So I'm pleading with the world now, like, wake up. We cannot allow this. This is our fight to stand up against, because if we don't, and that becomes normalized, the Donald Trump plans of the Riviera building, or the killing and the indiscriminate destruction and erasure of a people, then who's next? Who's next?
That's right. I mean, you're speaking about that metaphor that we talk a lot about on this stream, which is the imperial boomerang. It's often said that fascism is colonialism turned inwards, and a lot of the policies that the United States employs around the world come back and are used against the people in the imperial core. And I think, we're seeing that. I mean, it's often said also that Gaza is a military industrial complex laboratory. They're using
that is true.
Yeah, they're using a lot of this new technology, these biometric surveillance, these AI programs and software, and they're already using it against American citizens. And like you said, it's all back. You put it back framed with Palantir. It's completely true. And you mentioned about how your veteran buddies. I don't know if they're your buddies, but other veterans that you come into contact with, how they always say, well, they shouldn't have started a war. We hear that all the time. I never think that argument never works, and I think for two reasons. First, even if we accept their claim that history began on October 7th, they're still in violation of international law, because they're violating the principle of proportionality and the principle of distinction. And given that October 7th was not the beginning of history, we know that the real issue is the occupation, which has been going on. I always try to bring back UN Resolution 242, which was voted upon in 1967, which condemned Israel's occupation of the Gaza Strip, the West Bank.
And they ratify it every year.
Exactly.
They do it every year.
Every year this gets voted on. The
community comes back to vote on to ratify and renew that. And yet here we are.
Yeah, we have one or two, let's say, rogue countries that veto it, and that's the reason why it doesn't get implemented. But I just find it so hilarious that, if it's not so tragic, I find it hilarious that U.S. veterans and U.S. lawmakers want to spew this nonsense, which flies in direct confrontation to international laws, which we've signed on. We're a signatory to the UN Charter. We practically forged the UN Charter after World War II. So just the height of hypocrisy, if you ask me.
And to, what kind of, we've seen this before. If you look at when Donald Trump went to Israel to speak on the day before the signing of the peace agreement, but also back in the White House, he has invited her many a time. But Miriam Adelson,
oh my goodness,
billionaire, in President Trump's last public speaking engagement, where Miriam Adelson was present, he said to the world, to the United States, to every American sitting at home, to Joe Sixpack that's trying to put food on the table, trying to pay your car, trying to pay for your mortgage. The president of the United States said, this woman who puts Israel first, she is Israel first. She said it. He said it when he was making comments in the Knesset before the signing of the agreement. Like, I asked her, do you love Israel more than America? And I'm pretty sure she does. And you know, so it's not even a joke. They're insulting all of us by just being so open about it. But he said, she gave me $250 million for my last presidential campaign. And she said, when she came up on stage, shook his hand, oh, Donald, she said, and I'll give you 250 more if you run again.
That's right.
What?
That's right.
So what I tell everybody, what I would tell my children or my neighbors is that, so the next time some elite megalomaniac mega donor wants to pay a candidate for president, let's say $1 billion, give a presidential candidate $1 billion to do their bidding. Who's next? What if that person is a white supremacist? What if that person is a radicalized member of some other ethnic group, and then those were once in power now become the victim? That is so dangerous that America sits back and tolerates that because we don't feel it. And this is one of those things. It's almost I'm sure it's cliche to use this because it's been used so much now, but the boiling frog analogy, right? The frog in the water as the temperature increases.
Oh yeah, that's us.
By the point the water's too hot that it's going to kill the frog, he can't get out.
Ah, right.
He had plenty of time to get out, but once it hits that point, that boiling point,
it's too late.
He can't get out. So what I'm saying is that as America, as the world, as we look at this, it's like we're in the pot. We're seeing all of the conditions of the water's boiling. Like the pot's been put on the stove. The flame's been turned on. It's starting to get warm. All the little bubbles are starting. Oh, wow, this is this is getting pretty warm. What is it going to take? I mean,
it's a great question, Anthony. What is it going to take? I mean, the one caveat I would say is that Donald Trump, like we're talking about, says the quiet part out loud. It's not a mystery anymore. I mean, I think all of these policies were going on to a lesser degree, but maintained before Trump, but I think that the fact that he is so open about it, I'm hoping, and maybe this is the eternal optimist in me, that it will foment and mobilize organizations against the government and its policies, not necessarily the government, but the policies of the government. And we need some real actual institutional leverage against the political superstructure. But if there's one positive silver lining in this, it's that I think Trump is accelerating these the contradiction that's going, hopefully. I share that point with you. I share that point of view that yes, you are right that with he says all the quiet parts out loud that it's no longer a secret. It's like, hey, here it is. Right, and we haven't even started talking about Venezuela, which I wanted to get your take on as well. But I forgot what I was gonna say. But we could maybe on top of that, or we could definitely start talking about how Trump has seized 3 Venezuelan oil tankers. Yes. This all began with, he's got a armada built up in, off the coast of Caracas. And we were initially expected to believe that Venezuela posed a national security threat, and they're, the administration's calling what they're doing narco-terrorism, and Maduro is a narco-terrorist, and he's alleged to be ahead of these cocaine cartels, which are really CIA inventions. So I just find it interesting that it's shifted from like narco-terrorism. Well, it's about oil. It's really, they stole our land. And can you imagine that the president of the United States is claiming that Venezuela stole Venezuelan from the United States. I mean, it's absolutely insane.
We want our land and we want our oil back. Just like, what?
And I find it hard to believe that he's going. I memean, given your military expertise, we could talk about this. I also want to talk about the Charlie Kirk assassination too before we end. But I wonder, do you think that a land invasion from the U.S. military against Venezuela is likely? And given your background as, I'm not a military expert by any stretch, but I know that the Green Berets they're not. They're part of the special forces, am I right? And you were mentioning that they usually work in tandem with other coalition forces on the ground. Would they be involved in something like what Trump is trying to do to Venezuela and institute this regime change? Would that fall under the umbrella?
Yeah. We back in the 80s, we invaded Panama, we invaded Grenada. We've done these type of things before. So is a land invasion of Venezuela likely and possible? Yes, it is absolutely possible. And I think that is probably the number one course of action on Donald Trump's desk, on options that he wants to exercise, with all options on the table. Now, in addition to what we've already done in terms of the buildup of these naval forces, and this is why it's not just a buildup of naval forces, it's what naval forces. So the USS Ronald Reagan is not just any aircraft carrier. It is the most advanced aircraft carrier in the world. It is the crown jewel of the U.S. Navy. It is the most advanced aircraft carrier, hands down, period.
Just while you're saying that, how do you, I just thought of this, but how does that relate to the USS Gerald Ford? Because I've heard that like the Gerald Ford, which is the one I think that is parked outside of Venezuela, if I understand correctly, that it's the largest one, but you're saying the Ronald Reagan is.
I'm sorry. It's the USS Gerald Ford, not Ronald Reagan.
Okay.
USS Ford.
Yeah.
Got my presidents mixed up. Yeah. No, you are correct. The USS Gerald Ford.
That's the most advanced one and the largest.
The Ronald Reagan is the one that they brought in to kind of backfill the movement of the Gerald Ford, because so you have what's called carrier strike groups.
Right.
And an aircraft carrier doesn't just travel out there by itself. It has other maritime craft, battleships, tenders, frigates, destroyers, all these, various ships that travel with it. I don't know the name of all the ships, but it's a carrier strike group travels as an armada. It's huge.
Yeah.
So the USS Gerald Ford and its carrier strike group, not only is it the most advanced aircraft carrier of its kind in the world, it also has the most advanced fleet of maritime assets along with it, from which Navy SEALs are also afloat. But what you also had deployed as part of the USS Gerald Ford carrier strike group package into the Caribbean was the Marines SP MAGTF, or the Special Purpose Marine Amphibious Assault Group Task Force, SP MAGTF. It's a specialized unit out of the Marines that after World War II and all of the island hopping campaigns, where you had the Fleet Marines and you had Marine Expeditionary Units and Marine Expeditionary Forces, the SP MAGTF was created out of these specifically for early entry assault beachhead lodgement, securing of a beachhead in a naval to ground, a sea to shore type of operation.
Okay, I see. Yeah.
SP MAGTF is deployed afloat with the carrier strike group. We're building up. We have the largest buildup of military forces in Puerto Rico right now than we've had ever in our history. But the largest force buildup in Puerto Rico. So all of the assets that we've put there comes at a cost. So, prior to Venezuela being on the map as this apparently this inherent existential threat to our existence. You know, before that it was Iran, and that's why. And then it was, you know, China. So now we've taken our number one most important asset to thwart any potential threat from either Iran or China or Russia in its capabilities, and we've parked that thing in the Caribbean. And we're doing all of it. And again, the premise before was fentanyl is coming from Venezuela. It's a weapons of mass destruction. It's being trafficked by narco terrorists. Therefore, it's terrorism. It's terrorism against the United States. Therefore, we are justified in blowing up their boats. And therefore, we are justified in regime change. And therefore, we are justified in invading. It's like, hello, Bush called. He wants his foreign policy back. Like, we're rinse and repeating.
Yeah.
The same words of Iraq.
Right. And, you know, Donald Trump was elected partially as a rejection of Bush era policies.
Yes.
You know,
to keep us out of wars and keep us out of
right.
places that were not in U.S. interests to be intervening.
Right.
So so for everybody that was in the Trump base of the MAGA base, I would be. Yeah. If I was in the MAGA base, I'd be furious right now.
I think they are. I think a lot of them are. You know, but you're absolutely right. It seems like there is a war happening, an internal fracture, if you will, between the MAGA movement with the base and the donor class.
Yes.
So absolutely. It's been interesting to watch, I'll have to say, seeing neocons turn on each other, Israel first versus America first, and all this.
That's another fissure. That's really interesting. That it's you kind of have these almost like if you had two fault lines that are cracking that have come together, and like it's the San Andreas fault now, and it's like getting really wide to where there's so many issues that go into that now. It's like, oh well, hey Donald Trump, I thought you were going to be America first. Sounds like you're Israel first, and I thought you were going to end wars. And now we're starting one in our own backyard. I mean, it's war in the global south, especially since both China and Russia. Now, do we have the capability, and would we, from an operational standpoint, invade on land in Venezuela? Yes, I could definitely see that. I'm sure that there's, like I said, that's probably on President Trump's sticky notes of Venezuela courses of action. That's probably is number one.
Right.
There's others, I'm sure, but now that China and Russia are exerting so much pressure into this situation, I'm sure it's changing the calculus at the joint chiefs level of like, okay, maybe how do we step back from this? Because now you're not just going to be messing around with a country in the global south, literally in our backyard. You're bringing Russia and China in. It only gets messier from there.
Right. And Russia and China, I don't know much about this. You might probably know more, but they have also pledged like defensive weapons.
Yes.
And they're also implicated if the United States is to attack Venezuela. I mean, if you were a betting man and you had to make a bet on if this whole buildup, if it's actually going to come to fruition, because they've been parked out there for months now. I mean, like you said, it's a huge cost. You know, according to Colonel Lawrence Wilkerson, I don't know if you watch him, but he thinks that the whole operation is sort of atrophied at this point. You can't just keep these people at a heightened level of alert, for months on end. It's going to have its effect on the military. But if you had to predict the future, how do you think this all will turn out? I mean, I wouldn't personally be surprised if Trump kept up this antagonism all the way to the end of his term, and then right when he's supposed to be gone as president, he declares war officially, and now we can't get rid of him as a president because he's a wartime president, or pulls some sort of. I mean, he's alluded to pulling something like that. But what do you think is going to happen? Well,
I mean, Colonel Wilkerson's exactly right. Once you build up an invasion or an assault type of force for scale, you can't just leave it on the burner like that. There's an expiration date in terms of, don't bring all these things to the ready and be like, oh, we'll just keep it in the oven at 500 degrees. Like, nope, it's not going to last. There's operational rotations, there's shifts, there's just operational pressure. But unfortunately, our, Donald Trump, Pete Hegseth, Dan Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, they don't understand those principles. They don't understand that component of warfare or combat at scale. One, they've never done it, and two, they've never experienced it. So they don't understand that. So could I see an outcome where the president and the SecDef and this Congress, by taking no action, just allow this assault fleet to just sit there in this high state of readiness that will end up breaking the force in terms of rotations, in terms of morale, in terms of readiness, in terms of capability, in terms of blind spots and threats elsewhere? Could I see them doing that to our peril? I could. Could I see them doing some other type of offensive operation that would nudge very close to, or maybe dance along, Russia and China's red lines? I think this is one of those situations right now where I think you've got China and Russia and the United States all, tiptoeing, dancing around, trying to see where the red line is. Oh, is it a military buildup? Oh, well, they said some mean things. But they haven't done anything. Oh, is it if we take a ship? Oh, we took a ship 2 weeks ago and they got kind of mad, but they didn't do anything. So let's take another one. We'll just take another one. So then where does it go from there? From blowing up fishing boats off the coast of Venezuela and getting away with that, to now outright seizing oils and ships that now have an impact on the rest of the world. So knowing how military plans work, there is never one plan. There is never one CONOP, as they call it, a concept of the operation. It's never one big plan like, boom, here you go, flip to page 7. What do we do when we seized 3 ships? Russia got mad. Okay, where do we go? Flip to page 8. Okay, look at this. You military planners and military analysts always looking at, the indicators and warnings and how the situation changes, obviously. And to any type of plan, you might have a branch or a sequel, or let's do something again. Oh, well, let's de-escalate a little bit and just go back to blowing up the boats. Or maybe let's do a little bit of both. Like right now, because we're blowing up fishing boats off the Pacific side now, so just from the other ocean in the Pacific, and doing this oil and tanker seizure, we're kind of doing both right now. So, yes, there comes a point to where the saber rattling loses its effect if you rattle the saber too long. At some point, you gotta pull the saber out, or you gotta put it away. So,
I feel like
this administration doesn't understand that though. So who knows?
Well, I feel like I'm gonna wake up one day and hear that the United States has conducted a special military operation in Venezuela and we've seized an airport or something like that. But, it also got me thinking about how a lot of people were predicting that Iran would be attacked by Israel before Christmas. And of course, I would have predicted it back in like September. I would have said, sure. I think I did. And I was wrong, but do you think that an attack switching?
So I share the thought, or the premise that Israel will once again attack or start anew. Am I back?
You were lagging just for us. I was trying to catch it. You were lagging, but now you're back. I think so. Yeah.
I'm back. Okay, good. Whenever typically whenever I start to talk about Iran, China, Russia, spectrum starts to make
Mossad. Mossad comes in.
Someone's out there cutting my
Yeah, cutting the feed.
What I was saying was that the having, so I was in Israel when the exchanging of missile fire was happening, ultimately culminating in Operation Midnight Hammer with the B-52 strikes. But to lob missiles and munitions like that at each other is incredibly expensive. I think at the rate of which Israel was expending munitions.
I think we lost you just for a second again. Must have some lag issues.
When it lagged there, I could still hear you.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. It seems to it's cutting in and out. I guess we just can't talk about Israel anymore. They just they won't let us.
Yeah. What I was going to say was that the premise of hostilities starting again. Yes, I would not have said by Christmas simply because of the cost and the operational timeline needed to refurbish, refit, move. Because Israel moves its Iron Dome assets around. That's not something you just.
That's a good point.
You just throw it in the back of a truck and go in.
Yeah.
And take it to the next place. These are all done in highly coordinated secret movements. These things take time, a lot of time.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about moving assets to different areas, when you're talking about rearmament, when you're talking about preparing everything for, because once you throw the rock at that glass house, Israel knows that there's going to be rocks coming back.
Yeah.
And I think Israel also knows that this time Iran is not going to. Iran will take the gloves off. And Iran, Iran in the last time, Iran did not use very many of its more advanced missiles. It used a lot of its
that's right.
Lower quality, if you will, lower scale type. But they didn't really use a lot of their more advanced, so I do think that will come. I think that it'll probably be closer to probably close to like the January, February timeframe. I always think that they will. I've always thought that they will. I for one never thought that it would be as early as Christmas, simply because knowing how the assets and how they would have to prepare for that. It could have been. If I were a military planner, I would not foresee the ability to push the logistics and the operational support operation to have it set by Christmas.
Yeah, that seems like a pretty fair response there, considering the logistics of the whole operation. But I guess when we're dealing with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is trying to save his political career, I guess a lot of us just thought, well, he has a window of opportunity. We know he's been talking about war with Iran for 40 years now. So we thought, he wouldn't miss this opportunity and he would strike as early as he could. But yeah, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I think
once we saw this peace deal ceasefire going in, that now Bibi doesn't have a war. But if you see just yesterday, after all of the violations of the ceasefire that Israel has violated over the past weeks, now all of a sudden Israel's saying, well, Hamas violated it, so this might mean the war's back on. So old Netanyahu's got a couple of war levers to pull where he can, ramp things up. But I think we all know that Iran is still very much on that to-do list.
Yeah.
I just think there's just more preparation and planning that has to go into it in order to survive it.
Yeah. That makes sense. And I want to thank you for joining us. I know we've been at it for a bit, and I have just a couple more questions, if that's okay.
This is great. I enjoy talking to you.
Awesome.
Your audience is great. And this is important.
I appreciate that. Yeah, it is. It is very important. So I wanted to ask you about the Charlie Kirk assassination, and I figure you're a Green Beret veteran. You have a lot of combat experience. We've heard the FBI narrative. Let me see here. Given all your combat experience and what we're led to believe about the 30-06 coming from the rooftop, I mean, what do you think happened? Are you buying what the official FBI narrative is?
I take very little stock to no stock in anything that comes from the FBI now, and that's unfortunate. But it's just there. I would not go so far as to say that the entire bureau are clowns, but Kash Patel certainly is a clown.
Oh, big time, yeah.
I would not. Anything that comes out of the mouth of the Department of Justice or the FBI or the White House press, none of us can take any of it with any weight to it. It's just garbage. So what I think, so full transparency, I was in the afternoon, the day that Charlie Kirk was shot and killed on that day. And one of the staffers that we were sitting in with came in real quick and poked their head in to tell one of the congressmen that, hey, Charlie Kirk's just been shot. I'll be fully transparent. I did not know who Charlie Kirk was.
It's fair.
Right? When they came in and said that, I thought it was like a congressman or something. I didn't know what had happened. I was like, oh, is the Hill on lockdown? Like, what happened? Who's Charlie Kirk?
Yeah, right.
And then as I walk out of this congressional meeting and everything's just normal, I'm just like, well, I guess Charlie Kirk wasn't a congressional person, or who's Charlie Kirk? So I look and I was like, and I was just like, oh, I that's unfortunate. I didn't know who this person was. But since it has happened, obviously you can't not know about it. It's covered everywhere. But looking at these type of operations, in which the United States has been in the past, of which Mossad certainly has been involved with in the past, do I think that there is the conspiracies where they show the video where they think like one of his bodyguards, shot him with a pocket gun or something else? No, I don't believe any of that. Here's two schools of thought. Is it possible that this individual, who was not in the military, was able to fire a shot from that location and hit him in a very precise place? I say yes for the reason is that that's not that hard to do. He wasn't shooting out of I have seen snipers fire. I myself have not. I was not a sniper. But I have seen snipers shoot from helicopters, moving platforms, shooting at moving targets at elevation, at distance, with a target on the rolling sea, and then flying in a helicopter and hit precise. Now they're elite, well trained, but to place a rifle on a supported sandbag with an optic and take a shot, realistically, you could train a competent human being in about 1 day at the range to do that on their own. There's really nothing dynamic involved in that particular target. Now, when you put everything else together, yes, there are so many things that seem like so many pieces just don't fit. Like if I walk into my son's room and I'm like, "Did you clean your room?" and he says, "Yes," and I see underneath his bed there's like toys sticking out. Do I just say, "You cleaned your room"? No, I say, "What's that?" I go and look, and there's all these toys. I'm like, "You didn't put your toys away. Is that?" And then as I'm looking, I'm like, "Is this pot?" No, that's not pot. You're like, "Well, it smells like it." And it's like, what else is going on in this? What else are you up to? So when you just look at each thing, you're like, does that make sense? He did that? And it's like, well, do I believe that individual could have taken that shot from that spot and made that hit? Sure. Do I believe it when you consider all the other components that go into it? No, I don't. I necessarily don't have an alternative theory to that. I have seen some pretty good discussion, if you will, about the potentiality of an exploding microphone, or perhaps a shot from a different location. I've listened to many theories that all sound very well looked into, so to speak. What I do know is what I do believe firmly is that Israel did have a part in it. We all know that Charlie Kirk has a very powerful and mass platform. He won Donald Trump the election. I think from that particular voting demographic, Charlie Kirk won the election for Donald Trump with respect to that demographic, and potentially in its entirety because of that demographic. He was starting to question things with not just with what's happening in Gaza and what's happening in Palestine. That's one issue, but the Israeli infiltration into our government, into our government figures, into the president, into the secretaries, into the Congress, into lawmakers. I think that he was seeing that, and if Charlie Kirk was truly a America first, far right MAGA type of guy, well, Israel first is not America first. So what his questioning and the risk to put that entire base to be questioning Israel, I think Israel saw that as a risk that they could not gamble on. So do I think that they were involved in terms of the setup of the recruitment of the individual, either through some online influence or in agents that were involved in setting up the conditions? Like why wasn't it in the auditorium and at the last day before switched to outside? Like who was that really a necessary decision, or was that a Mossad agent who made who did Mossad agents put themselves in specific positions to craft the environment for that opportunity? I do think that absolutely. Who pulled the trigger? Was he killed by a co-located explosive device? Was he killed by the shot? I don't know. I do know that bullets do weird things. I've been shot before. I've been shot with a 308. So 30-06 is a substantial round. So you've got 5.56, right? 5.56 is what's fired out of a standard military M4. 308 or 7.62 is what's fired out of a machine gun or an AK-47. Bullets do strange things in the body. When I was in Iraq as an infantry platoon leader, I had a skipped round, a ricocheted round, go in my leg and came out my buttock. So
wow,
I mean, bullets, the ballistics of bullets do things in the body that doesn't always. You're like, how can that be? Believe me, it can be. I have seen bullets do things in entering and exiting a body that defies logic.
Was that a serious shot that you took? I mean, that seems pretty serious. It hit your leg. I mean, that could have killed you.
That's how I earned my Purple Heart in Iraq. Was earned.
Oh wow!
In the streets of Mosul in a firefight, and
that's insane. I'm thinking about all the war movies I've seen, like Hurt Locker, and then I'm trying to like imagine you in that scenario and how scary that must be. Maybe for me, maybe not for you.
Well, so as when I graduated from West Point, and before I became a Green Beret, I was an infantry officer. As officers, we cannot go directly into the Green Berets. We have to go into another branch first and then try out for Special Forces in our career. It's a little bit different for enlisted service members, but so, I graduated from West Point and we were at war and going to war and finished Ranger School. And I was like, I'm going to lead my men in combat. It's going to be glorious and American flag and apple pie. And within about a few weeks of being in Mosul, we were on a patrol, and, when it happens, you're not prepared for it. And this machine gun opens up, killed some of my men, and, bullets flying, and bullet, machine guns start going off, and you think you have in your mind how you're going to respond. I remember when I got hit, I was like, I jumped down in the street to crawl towards this. Literally, I was trying to get cover behind the curb of where the street and the sidewalk were. I was like trying to get down this little curb, and it hit me, and
wow.
And in that moment, I was like, I can't feel my leg, but I didn't know I had been shot. And
just the adrenaline, you probably didn't even feel it.
It's just the adrenaline and everything else, and but suffice it to say that with the round that was fired from that rifle, again, I am by no means a ballistics expert or
right.
a shooting expert. Typically, as officers, as an officer in combat, if we're shooting, things have gotten awfully wrong.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if the CEO is delivering mail, then the company's about to go under. So, so the ballistics of the round and everything, I don't know. I know one thing is that I do not believe whatever the FBI says.
Yeah,
that I do not believe.
That's fair.
So the alternative theories that exist, do I think that there's probably some truth and some validity to them? Absolutely. But one thing I do know that I feel very confident in is that in one way, either in coordination with the setup or the conditions leading up to it, or involvement with the shooter themselves, I do firmly believe that Israel and Mossad have their hands in it. And I believe that it was not only a way to make him be quiet, I also think it was a very clear message to Donald Trump, because when you look at the conditions afterwards, not soon after Netanyahu visits, afterwards you hear Trump talking a lot about his own immortality, like, maybe I'll go to heaven, maybe I won't. Charlie's up in heaven, maybe I'll go to heaven. I hope I go to heaven one day. Donald Trump's a human being. When someone is killed like that in a very violent and visceral way, and it's a message to you, as a human being, you respond to that. And I think I personally think that it was in a way Mossad involvement, and it was a message to Trump, and that he got that message loud and clear. And why he, this is the man that tells us how rich he is and doesn't need anybody's money, and he's his own self-made man, but then he's on a stage thanking Miriam Adelson for her $250 million campaign contribution, and that he'll do anything she says. That's not the Donald Trump that ran in 2024.
Yeah, you're right. It's like, what has happened? He's become so open about it all. And, Charlie Kirk was the face of the MAGA youth movement. It had to have felt like an attack.
Charlie Kirk would have been the heir apparent, if you will, to the MAGA empire, because it's surely not going to be JD Vance. It's not going to be Marco Rubio. I think today in one of his little let's all sit around the table at the end of the week and tell me how good I'm doing cabinet sessions. Yeah. Trump just said it. He was like, I don't think Marco should ever run for office for anything again. So it's like,
really?
Rubio sitting there. Yeah, you can listen to it. It happened just a while ago. And Rubio sitting there just kind of like with this like shit-eating grin on his face, like back in the little Marco days.
Yeah, in fact, from what I understand, Donald Trump and Marco Rubio hate each other, and the only reason that Marco Rubio is Secretary of State is because of Israel, because he was, his position.
Yeah, he's very pro, and individuals like, I'll tell you, Mike Huckabee,
God,
the ambassador, and Steve Witkoff.
Yeah,
when they went to the GHF site to see this operation, there were people dead outside of the gates of the distribution site, machine gun fire going on in the background, people fighting for scraps of food, and we were giving them no water. And they came back from that and said, "Oh, it's all going great. Everything's fantastic." I'm just like,
when you're when you're putting that image in my mind, I'm thinking of Heinrich Himmler, that famous photo of him like touring the Auschwitz camp. It's like
Yes.
There's Mike Huckabee touring Gaza. It's like same
Yes.
vibes.
Or the if you recall back in the 2003 days, March April timeframe, as the U.S. 3rd Infantry Division was entering Baghdad, you had the spokesman of the Iraqi military. They called him Baghdad Bob.
Oh yeah,
because he would always say things like, "Oh, the Americans are not in our borders," and like America's like, Operation Rolling Thunder to the capital. Yeah. And at one point he says there are the infidels have not made it into Baghdad, and you see outside of his window there's a U.S. tank from the 3rd IE sitting, and the other CNN interviewer is interviewing the commander of that tank battalion right outside the window of where Baghdad Bob is doing his interview, saying that there are no tanks in Baghdad. And the colonel that's standing there is waving in the back as you see the picture of, and then so they tell, as they're interviewing him, they're like, "How can you say there's no tanks in Baghdad? There's one right outside your window." And he looks behind him, and he looks back and he says, "Maybe there are some tanks in Baghdad.
Oh, yeah.
But they will not be victorious." And I feel that's like that way with this administration, to where there's no starvation going on. Are you blind? Is that the narrative you want to take, man? Because and then even Trump came out months ago and he was like, "Yeah, it looks like there's some pretty bad starvation going on in there," and everybody tried to scramble. Well,
yeah, he
said starvation. He didn't say.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, he sometimes, like when he unwittingly admitted that there's only 1.7 million Gazans remaining in Gaza. It's like, well, we know that there was 2.4 million before October 7th.
Which is why I said, I said this a couple times, and I said it on the Majority Report last week, that my assessment, having seen the death toll of heavy urban warfare.
Yeah.
The death toll in heavy urban warfare, even when you're doing everything you can to limit civilian casualties, it's still a high casualty rate. The amount of destruction, 50 million tons of rubble, not all of which has been non-searched through in Gaza.
Yeah.
And you consider the amount of deaths already from the war and the bombing and the shooting and everything else, I assess that the true death toll is near 500,000.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the population as it was and where it is now, coupled with the fact that Trump, said the quiet part out loud. So I don't think he just said that number because it popped into his head. Someone told him that number.
Absolutely.
So I think the death toll is probably close to 500,000, and I think the truth of that will come out. But yeah, it's just it's the Ambassador Huckabee. The fact that he can say some of the things that he says and still look himself in the mirror is beyond me. That man is something else.
Yeah, no, he's despicable. We watch a lot of his clips on stream and just, we can't believe what we're hearing. Yeah, it's completely sad. Yeah.
It's kind of embarrassing that that's coming from an American. You're like, can we get him out there? Can somebody can we bring him back?
It's so obvious that they're just being paid to say all this stuff, It's like
when Ted Cruz goes on stage and says that Israel is more important than the United States, and everybody's like, "What? You're a U.S. congressman." And he says, "If you don't think about it. That's what the Bible says."
Yeah, and he can't even quote what part of the Bible he's talking about, and then he says things like, "If you don't stand with Israel, then I don't stand with you." And he's talking to a bunch of Americans, people that he actually is supposed to represent.
Talking to his state.
And then we hear that, most delusionally, there's talk of him perhaps running for president. I mean, like, how delusional do you have to be? I feel like Tucker Carlson in that interview he gave with Ted Cruz, like, completely just destroyed Ted Cruz's future political career. But I guess that remains to be. I hope so too. Yeah.
I mean, you just can't. I mean, you don't. I mean, this is what I've been to a lot of countries. I've met a lot of world leaders, or have been exposed to many forms of governance and rule, from dictators to fascists to cult-like leaders. I've seen it all. I've seen it all. Seen it all. Like Duterte in the Philippines. You know, when Duterte was still the governor of Davao City, when he was running his little extrajudicial killing squads around the city, this man eventually became the president of the Philippines. And you know, I've seen a lot of different forms of government and leaders. And when you see some of them, you're like, well, that makes sense. I mean, this is an autocracy, or this is a dictatorship. But when you see in our country and you see that leader, it's like we allow it.
Yeah.
And I don't mean we in terms of all of us, but as a nation, when you know, who runs against Ted Cruz in Texas? I don't know, but the dude has re-won his senatorial seat every year he's run. So we can't say that he was elected.
Yeah. And the United States has a long history of propping up fascist leaders. It's much easier to control a country when you only got to pay off a few VIPs, you know, and to keep the natives at bay.
That's an interesting. That's a good point. Yeah, it's much easier to control when you only have to control the top elite,
the collaborators, and that's we've seen that happen. You know, Israel uses the same policies against Palestine. You know, they'll install collaborators, they'll buy off PLO members, and it leads to more revolts and et cetera, et cetera.
Netanyahu's years of directly funding Hamas for keeping certain people within Hamas, because Hamas hasn't always been militant minded, or I would say as militancy as their only tool. I mean, they were a governing body, but I think that Netanyahu paying off and buying off and funding Hamas intentionally to keep very militant hardliners in charge.
Yes.
Because it fits his narrative. A peaceful Hamas and a peaceful Gaza enclave does not fit his narrative.
Yeah. And Hamas, let's not forget, is an administrative body, like you're telling us, and they have a military wing, the Qassam brigades. I mean, that's pretty standard, you know, with countries, that they're allowed to have militaries, they're allowed to have military infrastructure.
Well, in fact, as you stated earlier, when you were pointing back to the United Nations resolution of the Israelis leaving certain parts of occupied Palestine, Lebanon, the Golan Heights.
Yes.
The UN resolution that was unanimously voted in, that not only allows but obligates an occupied people to defend themselves, and if necessary, through force. That is what Hamas represents, a governing body of the people with its, as you said, its military units, its Politburo, just like we see in other organizations similar to that. It's not like all Hamas are just these green bandana mask wearing fighter guys. That's obviously not true. But that is what the narrative, this Islamophobic Zionist narrative, will have us believe.
And they famously assassinate the moderates.
It's not the case. I would highly encourage people to read about the history of Hamas and the history of that relationship.
Certainly, it's a story of treachery. I want to return back to that, but I have two more questions. You've been so kind to give us your time. I wanted to get your opinion.
No, I enjoy talking to you. I'm here for you.
Appreciate it, Anthony. I wanted to get your opinion about this bizarre meeting that Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War / Defense, whatever, he convened this meeting a couple months ago. I forget the exact date. All the military generals from around the world, and Donald Trump and Pete Hegseth, basically saber rattled and tried to corral the troops and his military generals, and it just came. I don't know, from an outsider perspective, looking at this weird meeting, it seemed like almost an insult, a slap in the face to his own military, and sort of a message to the rest of the country that, look, I control the military. I will use the military against our own people if I have to. And I just can't imagine. And maybe you could speak to me, because you have, this has been your experience as a combat veteran. Like, how would you have perceived this? And what do you think was going through the minds of these people that were, asked to come hear this meeting? Do you remember what I'm talking about? I'm sure you do.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. They Hegseth convened all of the military's general officers and flag officers, admirals, general officers and flag officers from all the services, and brought them all to Quantico, Virginia, and delivered basically his manifesto of his secretarialship, I guess. It was I think Mark Kelly described it best in saying that having Pete Hegseth as our Secretary of War is comparable to a child playing army, who he sees it as a toy. He sees it as as like he goes in parties with his frat boys and talks about, oh yeah, hey, you think we should send a warship to Venezuela? Oh yeah, put that over Signal. I mean, from day one, this individual has shown all of us that he is not only incompetent, he is highly, highly underskilled, underexperienced, and unable to lead a department of this size. Pete Hegseth would have a challenge leading a department store, much less the Department of War. I mean, the guy is inept. So you could see the body language from all of those general officers sitting in that auditorium, the looks on their faces. Now, here's where I think I probably would have responded differently, because what I often mention, and this may be a surprise to many, but when a service member joins the military, regardless of what branch, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, as an enlisted, you have two branches, so to speak, or two bodies within the military. You have the enlisted and you have officers. When enlisted personnel take an oath, the enlisted soldier or enlisted seaman or enlisted airman, when they take that oath, they swear an oath to obey the orders of the President of the United States, the officers appointed above them, and to obey the Constitution in line with the orders of their commander-in-chief and the officers in charge of them. As an officer, a United States military officer takes the same oath as every member of Congress, every officer in office in the United States government. And that is, I swear to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and I take this oath freely without reservation. Period. That's it. A United States military officer does not take an oath of allegiance to a president, to a military, to a Congress, to a political party. And it's inherent in our nation's existence that we maintain that. So when the president, the commander-in-chief, stood on that stage as the commander-in-chief, that was not Donald J. Trump. That was the commander-in-chief speaking to every military leader from 1-star general to 4-star general. And he said to them to be ready to train in U.S. cities and describe the enemy within. And auditorium I feel, had an obligation to stand up, say no, sir, and leave. And they would have been right in doing it. The oath that we take, the reason our founders put against all enemies, foreign and domestic, is because from the very beginning in the creation of our country, it's always been known that that threat is always a potential, the threat from within, from dictators, so that we don't become a monarch, so that we don't have a king, so that we don't have someone trying to run for 3 terms. And if we, when it comes time to uphold that oath, when it comes time to put your money where your mouth is, if we're not willing to do it, well, then that oath means nothing. I mean, I think that every military officer in that room, when the president came up and said that, should have, and rightfully so, should have stood up and said, no, sir, and walked out.
And they would have immediately been fired, I'm sure, and taken note of for walking out on our precious king. Yeah, well,
they would have fired them all and they would have replaced them, but I think those that came in behind them would go with the same thing.
Yeah.
If if everybody goes along with it and nobody ever stands up and makes a stand, so to speak, we're just going to have continued obedience, if you will,
and continued repression as well.
Yes.
So, all right, my final question to you tonight is, I've heard you speak about how you really didn't know much about the Israel-Palestine conflict. As I understand it, you've said this before going to Gaza. You had believed whatever the Hasbara had said, and then you get to Gaza and there's obviously extreme cognitive dissonance, and you've changed. Is it fair to say that you basically did a 180 based on your own personal experience, your own personal involvement in Gaza? It completely changed your political outlook and perspective. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's fair to say that. I don't know if I would necessarily call it a 180. But definitely a look at, to your point, when I went to Israel, when I got off the plane, if there was someone standing there and saying, "Hey, you got to get in the one line or the other. Do you stand with Israel or do you not?" Well, I would have gone, I stand with Israel line. Everything I've always been told, they're this great military and they're
absolutely
really great. Yeah. They're fighting to defend themselves, and this is righteous and this is justified. And then each day in working with them very, very closely, and not working with them in terms of, just seeing them for a few minutes a day or this and that, working with them for days and days and days and days on end, on, hours ad nauseum, working with them and seeing their mentality and how they operate and why they make the decisions that they make and why they're doing the things that they're doing. There is no possible way in my mind as a logically thinking human being that I can justify any of it. It is not for self-defense. It is not proportional. It is not discriminate. It is not in line with international laws, but more so to the actions. There's all the actions taking place. Like if I'm struggling for something with my brother and my hand slips and I hit my sister, well, the fact of the act is that my sister was struck, but I didn't intend to. I wasn't intending to. So I think in a lot of cases with how Israel is waging this conflict, which I would not call a war, waging this genocide, they continually get the benefit of the doubt of like, oh, they didn't mean to. And then when you see it, it's like, oh no, it wasn't a mistake. He didn't slip and hit somebody. He intentionally is punching that person. That's intentional. And not only are they intending to do it, they know what they're doing. They're doing it for a reason. And the end state is not to have peace or coexistence or cooperation or a two-state solution or a peaceful settlement. Israel's plan is the complete annihilation. So
Yeah.
my view in terms of, oh, they're a good ally and we should support them, 180 in terms of that. Oh, absolutely, 180. I think that Israel is not a good ally. I think Israel is more of a threat to U.S. security and world security than probably any other factor right now in our world.
And whether or not it was a mistake or if they whoopsie, when you're a military conducting an operation, you don't get to claim negligence. This is this is part of the foreseeable outcomes, right? When you fire a javelin missile at a school, a time of day that a lot of students and people are going to be there, and that the blast radius is going to be this amount and it's going to send a shockwave. If you can't just claim that, oops, we didn't know that there was going to be some collateral damage. Right?
You certainly cannot do it over and over and over and over again,
right? And
then consistently claim that. And
right,
one of the points that I bring to congressmen when I speak with them on the Hill about HR 3565, block the bombs, stop providing these offensive weapons to Israel, is that if they have made so many mistakes and errors in their ability to use munitions, we should not be giving them these munitions. If it is intentional and they are doing it with the professional discretion and they're doing it intentionally, then we certainly should not be giving them these munitions. Either way, we shouldn't be giving them these munitions. Either they are psychopath killers, or they are more inept than Pete Hegseth.
You mentioned mowing of the lawn. You mentioned that phrase earlier in our conversation. Presumably, you have obviously studied the history. I mean, when did you become aware of like the other operations like Cast Lead and Protective Edge and all of these other war crimes, which were considered, mowing of the lawn? Was that when you got back home and you started looking into the history of the conflict more? Is that when that?
Yeah. I've been, it's almost when you see the truth of something, but it's almost I've almost been going through the stages of grieving in a way to where, at first you're in denial and then you accept it, but you're like, but is it really? No, I gotta, man, that relationship, that person was really bad for me, but oh man, the good times. Let me go back and look at the good times. And then, your buddy tells you like, hey, remember all this effed up stuff? And you're like, okay, yeah, I got to focus on that. So at first coming back, I'm like, am I crazy? Maybe what they're doing? I mean, is that like, am I wrong? Like, I was raised and brought up in the military that killing innocent civilians and targeting civilians and committing war crimes and intentionally starving people and intentionally killing children and unarmed combatants, like I was taught that was wrong. Am I wrong? Is that okay now? Is that right now? Like what?
I feel like that's a level of self-reflection for a U.S. combat veteran who spent, like you said, you've spent 25 years in service, and then to recognize that there's a lot of criminality involved. It's got to be hard to disidentify from something that you place so much pride in. I'm speaking broadly about. You're. I can understand that a lot of veterans, a lot of people that are in the U.S. military, they just don't want to see this because it implies their own identity is at stake, and who are they if they're not this thing that they built themselves up to be? So I commend you for being able to.
Nail on the head. I mean, for me, which I also find it hard for a lot of veterans to say that, when I fought in Iraq many times in Iraq and in Afghanistan and Syria and Tajikistan and the southern Philippines, and have lost men and have been wounded and have spent, this, as I said when we had started, this Christmas is my first Christmas that I've spent home in the last 25 years, and like learning how to live again. And when you look at all that and you say, I didn't go to Iraq for nothing. Well, did. Not only did I go for nothing, I went for the wrong reasons, and I was used in the wrong way. And
Yeah.
it's difficult to accept that, because I think for some that then means, well, you don't respect my sacrifice and you don't respect the sacrifices of the men and women that have sacrificed for their country. And that's not true.
Yeah, that's a great point.
But it's, you know, there's many analogies and many anecdotes and examples throughout history of peoples that are on, you know, the Third Reich and the Nazi regime is a classic example of this groupthink, to where at the very top you had the elites completely bought into it, and it was no accident in what they did. But then you had the majority of the masses that really didn't know what they were involved in. And then if you look at the majority of the Wehrmacht, or the army, when they were conscripting these very young German kids into the army, they were sent to the front lines of the you know, on the Eastern Front to fight in like Stalingrad. They didn't know what was going on back in central Germany with the final solution and the killing of the Jews. They didn't know that. If you're some young German in East Germany and you're conscripted to go fight in Stalingrad or Leningrad, you don't know what's going on. But you then can't tell yourself, oh, what I was doing was right and good. No, it wasn't. Right. But you have to be able to accept that. You have to be able to acknowledge that. That's what mature human beings do. You look at facts, you look at reality, and you assess based on facts and reality, not a fantasy of what you want it to be. Like to think that, oh yeah, our days in Iraq were for freedom and protecting America. No, it wasn't.
Right.
It was not.
And as new information comes available, it's important to self-reflect and you know, incorporate that into your conclusions. And I think a lot of people might not choose to do that, but it's not like an indictment against your identity. It's just, you know, we're just observing history and observing facts. And I think you've obviously, you know, the real important, significant part of your career is just beginning, because now you've had all this experience and you're completely relevant and insightful and helping everyone else unpack what's actually happening. And we really thank you for doing this. And I can tell by the comments here, we really appreciate your testimony and all you've been doing. So with that, I want to say thank you.
I admire your platform, your voice. I know that what you do and how frequently you do, you know, your platform, that it takes a lot of energy and a lot of effort. So I applaud you and your team and keeping at it. And this is voices like yours, platforms like yours, and others that are growing, grassroots types of platforms are the revolution of communication, of media in our country. No longer is the generation going to get news from these big corporate, fancy business suit wearing media moguls and CNN or Fox or, you know, what have you. This is how the generation coming up receives information, and we know that. I mean, even Hillary Clinton admitted it.
They all are. They're having all these conferences and they're all crying about how they're losing the narrative. It's so funny because we hear about how Israel's planning to spend another almost $1 billion on propaganda in 2026. And it's not going to work. We're tired of being gaslit. You know, the media establishment is just completely irrelevant. They've lost the plot. So it's really up to people like us to pick up the slack and educate people. And
well, you definitely do that. And I'm a huge fan. And
thank you.
It's been an honor to share in some really good conversation with you. And again, you're just seeing some comments from previous lives. Your audience is very well informed, and you've got a great audience out there. And you know, you're doing great work and just keeping the truth alive. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, that keeping the truth alive is it's the blood of this country. It's not our economy. It's the people. It's us. Absolutely. As a people.
Oh, 1000%.
And then when the working class Americans that work every day to put food on the table, to kiss their kids goodnight, to have enough money to spend with their family, not to be rich, not to have a ballroom, not to have a resort in Florida, not to have 14 private jets, but just to live a life of safety and
dignity. To live a life of dignity. Yes, absolutely.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Bingo.
Well, thank you, Anthony. I hope to have you back on real soon. I hope maybe we can make this a regular thing. I can bring you back maybe in January, and we can see what's going on with Iran and
anytime.
And
As things come up, I would love to discuss it with you.
Awesome.
I enjoy talking to you.
Thanks, Anthony. Have a great afternoon or evening, I should say, and happy holidays. And we'll talk to you again real soon. Thanks so much.
We'll be in touch, and thank you to everybody out there. Appreciate it.
All right. All right, guys. You heard it here first. Anthony Aguilar is a big fan of the Rathbone stream. That's high praise. I don't take it lightly. I forgot to ask him if there's anything else he would like us to know. I know he's not a social media guy, but anyway, we'll hope to have him on again real soon. I really enjoyed our conversation. And thank you guys for hanging out with us for a little bit. And I hope you got something from that. I know I did. And yeah, have a great night. And we'll be back tomorrow to do another stream. And I hope to see you there. Okay. Have a great one, everyone. Peace and love. Bye.